It's on my visiting card, sure enough, and it's them that's all a pink satin paper. That any gentleman that plaises may behood the interest thing words, Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet, 39 Southampton Row, Russell Square, Parish o' Bloomsbury. And should you be wanting to discover who is the pink of perlightness quite, and the later of the hot ton in the whole city o' London, why it's just meself. And faith that same is no wonder at all, so be pleased to stop curling your nose for every inch of the 6 wakes that I've been a gentleman, and lift aff with the bog throthing to take up with the baronacy. It's Patrick that's been living like a howly emperor and getting the edication and the graces. Och, and wouldn't it be a blessed thing for your sperrits if you could lay your 2 peepers just upon Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet, when he is all riddy drist for the hopperer, or stipping into the brisky for the drive into the Hyde Park. But it's the elegant big figure that I have, for the raison of which all the ladies fall in love with me. Isn't it my own swate self now that'll measure the 6 foot, and the 3 inches more nor that in me stockings, and that am excatingly will proportioned all over to match? And is it really more than the 3 foot and a bit that there is, anyhow, of the little old furriner Frenchman that lives just over the way? And that's a ogling and a goggling the whole day, and bad luck to him, at the purty witty Mistress Trackle that's my own next-door neighbor, God bless her. And most particular friend and acquaintance. You percave the little spalpeen is summit down in the mouth and wears his lift hand in a sling, and it's for that same thing, by your lave, that I'm going to give you the good raisin. The truth of the whole matter is just simple enough. For the very first day that I comed from Connaught and showed my swat little sylph in the straight to the widdy who was looking through the windy, it was a gone case altogether with the heart of the purty Mistress Trackle. I percaved it, you see, all at once, and no mistake, and that's God's truth. First of all, it was up with the windy in a jiffy, and thin she threw open her 2 peepers to the itmost, and thin it was a little gould spyglass that she clapped tight to one of them. And divil may burn me if it didn't spake to me as plain as a peeper cud spake, and says it through the spyglass. Och, the tip of the mornin' to ye, Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet Mavourneen, and it's a nate gentleman that ye are, sure enough, and it's meself and me fort and just that'll be at your sarvice, dear, any time o' day at all for the asking. And it's not meself you would have to be bait in the perlightness. So I made her a bow that would have broken your heart altogether to behold, and thin I pulled aff me hat with a flourish, and thin I winked at her hard wid both eyes, as much as to say, Through for you're a swate little creature, Mrs. Trackle, me darlint, and I wish I may be drowned to dead in a bog, if it's not meself, Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet, that'll make a whole bushel o' love to your ladyship in the twinkling of the eye of a Londonderry purity. And it was the next morning, sure enough, just as I was making up me mind whether it wouldn't be the perlite thing to send a bit o' writing to the widdy by way of a love letter, when up come the delivery sarvant wid an elegant card, and he told me that the name on it, for I never could read the copperplate printing on account of being lift-handed, was all about Mounseer, the Count, a goose, look-I-see, Mater de Dons, and that the whole of the divilish lingo was the spalpeeny long name of the little old furriner Frenchman as lived over the way. And just with that in come the little willain himself, and thin he made me a broth of a beau, and thin he said he had only taken the liberty of doing me the honor of the giving me a call, and thin he went on to palaver at a great rate, and divil the bit did I comprehend what he would be after the tilling me at all, excepting and saving that he said pully woo, woolly woo, and told me among a bushel of lies, bad luck to him, that he was mad for the love of my witty Mistress Trackle, and that my witty Mrs. Trackle had a punchin' for him. At the hearing of this ye may swear, though I was as mad as a grasshopper, but I remembered that I was Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet, and that it wasn't altogether gentle to let the anger get the upper hand of the perlightness. So I made light of the matter and kept dark and got quite sociable with the little chap. And after a while, what did he do but ask me to go with him to the widdy's, saying he would give me the fashionable introduction to her ladyship. Is it there ye are? Said I thin to meself. And it's through for you, Patrick, that you're the fortunatest mortal in life. We'll soon see now whether it's your swate sylph, dear, or whether it's little Mounseer Mater de Don that Mistress Trackle is head and ears in the love wid. Wid that we went aft to the widdy's next door, and you may well say it was an elegant place, so it was. There was a carpet all over the floor, and in one corner there was a 40 penny and a Jew's harp, and the divil knows what Ilsa, and in another corner was a Sophie, the beautifulest thing in all nature, and sitting on the Sophie, sure enough, there was the swate little angel, Mistress Treacle. "The tip of the morning to ye," says I, "Mrs. Treacle." And then I made sich an elegant obeisance that it would have quite altogether bewildered the brain of ye. "Woolly woo, pulley woo, plump in the mud," says the little furriner Frenchman. And sure enough, Mrs. Treacle, says he that he did, "Isn't this gentleman here just his reverence Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet? And isn't he altogether and entirely the most particular friend and acquaintance that I have in the whole world?" And with that the witty she gets up from the Sophie and makes the swattest curtsy nor iver was seen, and thin down she gets again like an angel. And thin by the powers it was that little spalpeen Mounseer Maître de Dawn that plumped hisself right down by the right side of her. Och hun! I expected the two eyes of me would have comed out of my head on the spot, I was so disparate mad. However, "Bait who," says I after a while, "is it there ye are, Mounseer Maître de Dawn?" And so down I plumped on the lift side of her ladyship to be even with the willin. Botheration. It would have done your heart good to percave the elegant double wink that I gived her just thin right in the face with both eyes. But the little old Frenchman, he never began to suspect me at all, and disparate hard it was he made the love to her ladyship. "Woolly woo," says he, "pulley woo," says he, "plump in the mud." That's all to no use, Mounseer Frog Mavourneen, thinks I. And I talked as hard and as fast as I could all the while, and troth it was meself just that diverted her ladyship completely and entirely by racin' of the elegant conversation that I kept up with her all about the swate bogs of Connaught. And by she give me such a swate smile from one ind of her mouth to the other that it made me as bold as a pig, and I just took hold of the ind of her little finger in the most delicatest manner in nature, looking at her all the while out of the whites of my eyes, and thin only to percave the cuteness of the swate angel. For no sooner did she observe that I was after the squeezing of her flipper, thin she upwitted in a jiffy and put it away behind her back just as much as to say, "Now thin, Sir Patrick O'Grandison, there's a bither chance for ye, Mavourneen, for it's not altogether the gentle thing to be after the squeezing of my flipper right full in the sight of that little furriner Frenchman, Mounseer Maître de Dawn." With that I gived her a big wink just to say, "Lit Sir Patrick alone for the likes of them thricks." And then I went aisy to work, and you'd have died with the diversion to behold how cleverly I slipped my right arm between the back of the Sophie and the back of her ladyship, and there, sure enough, I found a swate little flipper all awaiting to say, "The tip of the morning to ye, Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet." And wasn't it meself sure that just give the last little bit of a squaze in the world, all in the way of a commencement, and not to be too rough with her ladyship? And oh, botheration, wasn't it the gentlest and delicatest of all the little squazes that I got in return? Blood and thunder, Sir Patrick Mavourneen, thinks I to meself. Faith, it's just the mother's son of you, and nobody else at all. That's the handsomest and the fortunatest young bog-throtter that ever comed out of Connaught. And with that I give the flipper a big squaze, and a big squaze it was by the powers that her ladyship give to me back. But it would have split the seven sides of you with the laughin' to behold, just thin all at once, the concated behavior of Mounseer Maître de Dawn. The likes of sich a jabbering and a smirking and a parley-wooing as he beginned with her ladyship, never was known before upon arth, and divil may burn me if it wasn't my own very two peepers that cotched him tipping her the wink out of one eye. Oh, hun, if it wasn't meself then that was as mad as a Kilkenny cat, I should like to be told who it was. "Let me inform you, Mounseer Maître de Dawn," said I, as perlit as iver ye seed, "that it's not the gintall thing at all, and not for the likes of you anyhow to be after the ogling and a goggling at her ladyship in that fashion." And just with that such another squaze as it was I gived her flipper, all as much as to say, "Isn't it Sir Patrick now, my jewel, that'll be able to the protecting of you, my darlint?" And then there comed another squaze back, all by way of the answer. "Through for you, Sir Patrick." It said as plain as iver a squaze said in the world. "Through for you, Sir Patrick Mavourneen, and it's a proper nate gentleman ye are, that God's truth." And with that she opened her two beautiful peepers till I believed they would have comed out of her head altogether and entirely, and she looked first as mad as a cat at Mounseer Frog, and thin as smiling as all out of doors at meself. "Thin," says he, the Willian, "oh hun, and a woolly woo, pulley woo." And thin with that he shoved up his two shoulders till the divil the bit of his head was to be diskivered. And thin he let down the two corners of his purity trap, and thin not the bit more of the satisfaction could I get out of the spalpeen. Believe me, my jewel, it was Sir Patrick that was unreasonable mad thin, sure enough, and the more by token that he kept on with his winking and blinking at the widdy, and the widdy she kept on with the squazing of my flipper as much as to say, "At him again, Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Mavourneen." So I just ripped out with a big oath, and says I, sure enough, "Ye little spalpeeny frog of a bog-throtting son of a bloody noun." And just thin, what do you think it was that her ladyship did? Troth, she jumped up from the sofy as if she was bit, and made aft through the door, while I turned my head round after her in a complete bewilderment and botheration, and followed her wid me two peepers. You percave I had a raison of my own for the knowing that she couldn't get down the stairs altogether and entirely, for I knew very well that I had hooed of her hand for divil the bit had I ever let it go. And says I, "Isn't it the last little bit of a mistake in the world that you've been after the making, your ladyship? Come back now, that's a darlint, and I'll give you your flipper." But af she went down the stairs like a shot, and thin I turned round to the little French furriner. "Och, hun, if it wasn't his spalpeeny little flipper that I had hood of in my own—" "Why, thin it wasn't, that's all. Maybe it wasn't meself that just died thin outright with the laughin' to be hood the little chap when he found out that it wasn't the widdy at all that he had hood of, but only Sir Patrick O'Grandison. The old divil himself niver beheld such a long face as he pat on. As for Sir Patrick O'Grandison, Baronet, it wasn't for the likes of his riverence to be after the minding a thrifle of a mistake. Ye may just say, though, for it's God's truth, that afore I lift hold of the flipper of the spalpeen, which was not till after her ladyship's footman had kicked us both down the stairs, I gived it such a nate little broth of a squaze as made it all up into raspberry jam. "Woolly woo," says he, "pully woo," says he, "cut tam." And that's just the truth of the raison why he wears his lift hand in a sling.